Hi everyone. I think we're just gonna wait a couple of minutes until everyone joins. Jasmine, are you still accepting people into the chat?
Yes, I'm actively allowing everyone to join in a bit.
Okay. Just give us a heads up once
All
you've
right.
allowed everyone into the room. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for those who have joined us today. I'm still actively opening the waiting room, and because it's already 8 minutes past 7, I think we can start around a couple of more minutes. And after the 7:10 we can start, and I will just like automatically let people in so that we can still continue on the schedule. Thank you.
Nyala lagi, enggak. Baru nyalain lagi. Mama ngomong lagi tapi tidur. Jadi mama matiin.
All right. I think as for now, we have everybody here. And again, welcome everyone. Welcome to Shelf Therapy Livestream Book Club. Uh, in this session, we will have the book club for around 90 minutes with our host, Laksmi Wardana, and our facilitator, beloved Susan Ryan. So, in this next couple of minutes, we will be going through and having a discussion, very casual, light, and engaging discussion about self love and also the book Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn. So without further ado, please welcome Laxmi and Susan Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Hi, everybody. I see some familiar faces here. Thank you so much for joining our second live stream online book club. And I'd just like to introduce myself. I am Laksmi Swardana, the founder of Shelf Therapy, and I'm so excited to have you all here. I also have Susan Ryan with me, who facilitated our journaling workshop on the 16th of February, which was a journaling event workshop all about self-love. And I'm so excited to welcome you all here today at the book club because um, I know that, you know, community is so important these days, and at Shelf Therapy, we want to strengthen that. One of our goals is also to introduce reading and book clubs to all of you out there. So I hope that today we can have a beautiful discussion about not just the book, Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn, but also the very popular topic of love. And so I'd like to pass it on to Susan now to introduce herself and also her experience with being in book clubs.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here, and thanks for inviting me, Lakshmi. I don't think I've met a few people when I did the book journaling on self-love, but was anybody there at the time? Can you raise your virtual hand if you were there?
I also
Uh,
like to add and encourage everyone to open their cameras and show their beautiful selves and also engage and participate in this discussion because, again, it's a book club where we want you all to participate and like voice out your opinions and comments about this book.
Absolutely.
Susan,
Absolutely.
by the way, we have Mayang here who joined our previous journaling workshop.
Hi, Mayang. I can't see you at the moment, but it'd be good to see all your faces. And as Lakshmi said before, I mean, I was telling Lakshmi about the old style of doing book clubs because you probably know they've been around forever, right? And before they had online, people used to, at one night a week, they'd go to somebody's place and they'd bring alcohol or not alcohol or drinks and food. And they all would have read this book, and it was a real participation. Somebody probably led it, but it was an active participation about hearing the different views and listening to each other. So that's what we're really encouraging tonight too, for you to feel free enough to come online and just say what you want to say about the book and your experience about the book, and listen to what others have to say about it as well. So anybody not up for that?
Um,
Okay.
And now, before I get and dive into the book, we'd like for all of you to actually introduce yourselves to everyone. If you'd like to open up your mics and say hi, you're very welcome to. But if you're a little bit shy and you're unavailable to speak right now, you could also use the chat below to just type your names and say maybe where you're from. And I also have a question for all of you. I'd like for everyone to define in one word what is love, or more than one word. So what is love for all of you? Adia maybe would like to say hi and
Hi
tell us
guys.
a little bit about yourselves and define what is love for you.
Hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Laxmi. Good to
We
see
only
you.
see half of your face, sorry.
Oh, hello. I'm with Ash right now. I'm based in Bogor, but we're right now in Singapore, in her house. Anyways, the question of what is love, that's a deep and hard question, I guess. What is love? I think it's an
I think like love is just really being compassionate towards like yourself and others. Doesn't really have to be like an act or anything. It's just a feeling. Just being really kind and compassionate towards like anything and anyone. And I think that's love to me.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Ash. Would you like to say hi and introduce yourself?
So I'm Ash. Well, this is actually my first book club experience, and I haven't actually
Same.
read the book that you guys are on. So I'm really excited. I'm based in Singapore. I teach yoga. I love yoga. I love practicing yoga. And reading is something like me and Arya want to really get on this year. So really interesting. Very excited to be here.
That's so good to know. Thank you so much for sharing. And I also actually went to her first event on Valentine's Day in Jakarta, which was really fun. Anybody else would like to say hi? I know that for a lot of you, it's also your first time to join a book club. And so I encourage a lot of my friends who even are not big readers to participate and to just see what it's like to be in a book club, because it's nothing scary or too serious. Actually, it's really, really fun to be in a book club and to share your opinions on what you've read. Hi, Shafira from Depok. Happy to be here. For me, love is constant forgiveness. That's so beautiful. And hello, everyone. This is Mutiara. For me, love is to bring contentment, connection, and meaning to our lives. That's so nice. Thank you so much. Um, how about you, Susan?
I
Could
was
you
just
share?
about to jump in because I was so busy telling you about the book club, I didn't really tell you who I was. So yeah, I'm a facilitator, obviously, and a coach. What is love for me? It's such a complex and deep question. And I agree with what everybody said. I think it's that sense when you can be totally yourself, warts and all. That's love with someone else and to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty simplistic take on it, but yeah, that's my experience.
That's also really beautiful. It's like unconditional love. For me, there are many forms of love. And the other day, when I joined this broadcasting workshop for Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, we were asked to speak about love spontaneously. And so, actually, we were asked to talk about the first time we fell in love. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? And I thought maybe. Well, I didn't think much. I just had a flash of a memory from when I was younger, from when my dad first gave me this huge, thick book with a lot of foreign words in it, and it was a Spanish dictionary. And so I thought maybe that was the first time I fell in love with languages. So I think love comes in many forms. It could be, the first time you fell in love with a language, for example, or the first time you tried like your favorite food, that's also a form of love. And so this book was chosen because our monthly theme in February is all about love. Actually, we were thinking about reading Dolly Adeltern's Everything I Know About Love, but we chose this book because it features Dolly, and also it has so many different authors that were interviewed on their perspective and their experiences on love. So it's really a wonderful book about love and in all its forms. And in the book, journalist Natasha Lunn explores, the many dimensions of love, whether it's romantic, platonic, familiar, or love with yourself through a series of interviews with writers, psychologists, and thinkers. In the industry, there are so many. I could name a few for all of you. There's Alain de Botton. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but I love his work so much. If I'm not mistaken, he founded the School of Life, and he also writes a lot about life and relationship and love. And then she also features Esther Perel, who is an expert in relationships, and I listen to a lot of podcasts with her in it. And many others, including Dolly. And yeah, so she tells us all about her story and her personal experiences. And Lunn uncovers the way love and relationships sort of shapes us and transforms us. And she touches on vulnerability, connection, loss, and the evolving nature of relationships. Actually, one of my favorite things written in the book is about how love is actually very fluid. Love comes and goes, and our feelings sort of fluctuate, but we always sort of approach it from a fixed position, which I find really, really interesting. And then the book also offers a very thoughtful and intimate exploration of what it means to love and to be loved. And it challenges conventional narratives and highlights the complexities of human connection and relationships. So it's really, really interesting, especially probably if you're actually kind of struggling with relationships, not just romantically, but maybe perhaps also with yourself or with a friend or even a parent. So I do recommend this book to anyone who would like to learn a little bit more about relationships and love, because I feel like we're not taught enough in school and maybe in life about it. So by reading, we can also, become better people, better humans through improving our relationship with others and ourselves. And there's one part of the book where they spoke about writing as an act of love. Um, Natasha asked, A lot of writers I've interviewed have talked about writing as an act of love, a way of being seen and forming, sorry, a way of being seen and forming connection. Do you see writing poetry as a form of love? This was an interview with Lem Sisse, who's the author of My Name is Why. And they answer that they answer that's precisely it. In fact, my psychotherapist said that writing poetry is an act of self-love, which allows me to feel a sense of purpose. It could be pottery, it could be painting, it could be running. And I also love this part. Creativity is not the monopoly of artists. You could find it in your shopping habits or in how you design your front room or how you style your hair. I wish more people understood that because then they could fully embrace its power and access that sense of self and love that I get when I've created something that matters. Sometimes poems feel like your children too. When they go out into an audience, people may criticize them, but I think, well, that's my child. I don't care. I know where it's good, I know where it's bad, I know where it's got to develop. Poetry has also been my closest friend and my family. It holds me in mind. It's a flag in the mountainside of my journey. I can look back at poems I wrote when I was 18, and they will tell me where I was, what I was feeling, what I was going through, and who I was. In the lieu of my family, that's as close to being held in mind as I can get, which is a strong part of what love is. And so there's a lot of beautiful question and answers like that. And yeah, I highly recommend this book. And then I just want to like break down some of the key themes that I found in this book. So the first one is the different forms of love that I mentioned. There's the romantic love, there's friendship, there's familial, and there's self-love. And then the second theme I find is the vulnerability and connection. There's also the theme of love and loss. And lastly, how self-love impacts our relationships. So maybe if there's some of you here that have read the book or briefly even read the book, what do you think? Which theme do you think resonate with you the most? Or maybe perhaps if you haven't read the book, is there sort of something that you resonate with right now that you like to share, maybe about self-love or love and loss and connection? Maybe if you've read the book, like raise your hand and so we can see. Oh, Mutiara has read the book. Are you able to speak, Mutiara, or maybe share with us a little bit about the key themes that you resonate with the most?
Okay. So first hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Mutiara. And yes, I have read Conversations on Love. And after reading this book, I felt that the friendship and familial love is the one that resonates with me the most. So I've only dated someone one time, and what happened like in my late 20s. So I think I have enough love that I earned from my friends, from my family. So that's why I feel complete before I enter the romantic love or seeking love outside those circles. And then I think one of the things that this book is quite important is that it talk about how do we find love, how do we sustaining it, and then how can we survive after we losing it. And this is also the second time I joined a book club that talk about conversations on love, and only one male joining the session, because the previous book club also happened to similar like that. Only one male, and then it somehow spoken the unspoken realities that men and men to men interactions is rarely talked about love, and women mostly have to bear the emotional labor when we talk about love. So that's why I feel like this book has also needs men also need to read conversations on love, and so we could understand um how love is not only about women's perspective, and so that's why it's really such a wonderful book, I would say. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much, Mutiara. That's a really great insight. Actually, a similar thing happened in our self-love journaling workshop. There were no men at all joining. And so it made us all wonder why love is a very popular topic for women, or self-love. Um, but not so much for men. I feel like maybe men might do it more privately or within guys only. So that's a very interesting topic. Maybe Adia could add on to that, and Susan could add into that because of our past experience at the workshop.
Hi. I think
Hi.
speaking for guys, as the only guy here,
Hey, can we all
Yay.
um,
round of applause?
I
Brave man. Well done.
as a guy and hanging out with other guys, we don't really talk about our feelings much. It's just how we are, you know. We especially, like, for example, if I hang out with my friends, you know, even if childhood friends or any friends, you know, and like I'd go home and like she would ask, you know, like, what do you guys talk about? And we don't talk about anything, you know. Like let's say we're playing golf, we're just playing golf, you know, we're just playing golf, drinking beer, and then just having a good time, and we just go home. We don't talk about like how are you, or like how what are you feeling, you know, or we don't do those kind of things. So we just, it's not normal for us to talk about our experience about love. Like we'll show you, you know, we'll show you how we're gonna care for you, how affectionate we are, but I don't think talking is a big thing, at least for me. So yeah, that's why I guess when there's a workshop about talking about love, talking about your feelings, I guess it's um guys would feel vulnerable, and not vulnerable, but they're also not used to it, right? So if you tell me like talk about your feelings, I won't even know how to start.
Interesting.
So that's that.
So what about the idea of self-love? So not love that you give for other people, but for yourself. Is that something you ever talk or think about, at least to yourself?
I think I don't really think about it, but I just do things. Like for example, I know I want to be healthy. I know I want to like look good, feel good. So how I'm doing that is I go to the gym every day, or like I skip like junk food, you know, and I eat like my chicken and broccoli or something like that. I think that's a form of self-love, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do
But I don't
anything?
really talk about or reflect about it. I just like do it, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Susan, do you want to add to?
Yeah, I really like your honesty. Thanks for that. You know, I do think it's a cultural thing and a global cultural thing as well, that and it's sort of two-stranded. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain it clearly in science terms. But you know, we are equal, but we are different as men and women. If we just want to take, you know, that in those two frameworks. And you know, in most cultures, men have been
Scientist, so I can't explain it.
to be the protectors and, you know, the hunters, right? And for a hunter, I mean, this is all genetics that are still within us, and we are the gatherers, and we are on cycles all the time as women, which makes us more emotional than men, because of our hormones. But for a man to be vulnerable from that primal part of us, I think you hit it on the head when you said that. Even though we don't live in those times and we don't have to survive in that same way, but there is that sense of, this is what I hear from other guys as well, that it's a reluctance to be vulnerable. They could be seen as perhaps, weaker, or it's a vulnerability around it, because definitely when we're in states of love, there is that whole vulnerability. It's not just strength, it's showing all sides of ourselves when we're insecure, and when we're hard on ourselves, and when we do things that aren't that great and we've failed and we've been successful and we're doubting ourselves, and then we're really confident. It's all of it. It's really all of it. And to be able to show all of it with someone else takes a whole lot of trust from the other person, feeling safe to be able to do that they're not going to blame us, shame us around that, because we've probably got some shame around it anyway. And it's got to be a safe sort of space to do it. And not only that, I think for myself, whenever I've experienced this, particularly with friends, and this is what I love, they mention this in the book as well, around friendships, is that a friend will hold that space for you to be all those things. And when you're feeling that you doubt yourself, when you've forgotten who you are for a moment, which all of us do, and maybe you've done something that's a bit didn't go the way you wanted to, or it was, you just had a bad day and you just feel like a real failure and you're not feeling great about things. It takes a friend and someone who loves you to actually remind you of who you are, to hold that space for you, so until you can get back to it yourself. It's like holding up a mirror and go, oh, you know what? Sure, you're all these self-doubting and you're all these insecurities, and guess what? You're this as well. So it just brings balance and brings you back to that center place. They hold the love for you when we forget to love ourselves.
Thanks, Susan. And then coming back to the topic of self-love, I just wanted to share a little bit of self-love from the book. So in the beginning of the book, there's an interview between Natasha Lunn, the author, and Alain de Botton, the founder of the School of Life. And Natasha asked Alain, so she asks, a topic I'm getting different points of view on is the cliche that you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. I'm wondering if rather than self-love, perhaps self-understanding is a more useful goal. Where do you stand on this? And then Elaine answered, I'd place the emphasis on self-understanding too, and the capacity to communicate it. If somebody said, I don't adore myself, but I'm interested in myself and I can communicate the truth about myself to other people, that would be more reassuring than somebody who said, I'm perfect. Acknowledging your brokenness, pain, and insufficiency is a rather romantic thing to do. Actually, an over-empathic, self-admiration cuts you off from other people, whereas an engagement with your own vulnerability is key to building a bond. When it comes to self-love, it's not so much about loving yourself, but accepting that all human beings have their less impressive sides, and so your less impressive sides don't cut you off from the possibility of having a good relationship. They don't mean that you're a terrible person who doesn't deserve love. They just mean you are part of the human family. And so I thought that was a really beautiful way to talk about self-love, and sort of like to go against the idea that self-love is self-obsession, which it isn't at all. So yeah, that's one of the topics in the book, discussing self-love, which I think that we should talk about more, or maybe not talk about more, maybe practice more through whatever it is that that helps us in fostering self-love. And so one of the ways is through journaling. Maybe Susan would like to add a little bit on self-love and journaling and how we can practice that.
Absolutely. I have been journaling on and off for years, and then for years I didn't. I started when I was really young, and then even only quite recently, I've started quite seriously doing it every day. And it's so good. It just gives me that sense of getting out of whatever is in my mind without judgment of myself, without thinking I can't say that because someone else might read it, without fear of offending anybody else, with giving total permission for all the parts of myself to say what they need to say, judgment, whatever. And it's sort of what it tends to do for me is it's a form of love because I'm allowing that, but I'm also able to step back. And like you were just talking about then, Lakshmi, is I can see and hear myself rather than just being in it. I can see and hear myself, which gives me a different perspective. And then I'm able to go, oh, wow, this is how I was feeling about that. Oh, this is what I thought. And then sometimes I'll go back and I'll reread it and I'll go, wow, that was not what I was thinking at the time. Okay. I thought, okay, I'll give you an example. I thought a couple of weeks ago that something happened with a client and I thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And did it all wrong. And then I hear from the client and I'd made the whole thing up in my own head. It wasn't like that at all. I don't know why I misinterpreted something. And then I reread it and went, oh my goodness, yeah, I got that. So I was able to calm myself and, reset myself, which is a part of the self-love journey, checking out self-awareness, through self-awareness, where you're at and resetting yourself. And no matter how you're feeling or what you're doing or what's going on for yourself, it's okay. And here's something else that I do to self-soothe in some ways, which sounds a bit kooky, but I did read in another book the other day that, and this woman was a psychotherapist, so I thought, okay, she knows what's going on. That, if I'm really upset about something, then I'll actually stop and I'll have a conversation with myself. And sometimes it's like there's a couple of people in the room. I'll say, okay, what's up? And then the part of me that's upset will have that conversation and say what's up. And then I might say something like, well, what do you need right now? Oh, I just need to go for a walk or do something like that. Now, that's not always possible, right? So I might promise myself to do that later. But that part of myself that are upset, I give voice to it, to myself and for myself. And also you can do that with friends, of course, but for self-love and self-soothing, it's a really good way to be self-aware of what's going on and give yourself what you need in any given moment. Does anybody else relate to that? Anybody ever had a conversation with yourself like that?
Not so much for self-love, because to be honest, we tend to, or I tend to think about self-love more about physical self-care. And we tend to neglect a little bit about our mental care for self-love, I feel. But I've started to not have conversations with myself, but tell myself to stop sabotaging myself. And that, or sometimes I'm like, I'm my first priority, or like I'm here for me. If someone isn't there for you, you don't have to feel lonely because you are there for yourself. Those kind of little things that I would try to catch myself in those bad moments and tell myself, if that makes sense. But for someone who's never really done that or never even journal, what are the tips that you might be able to share with us to start doing that, to start being more aware about ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think, first of all, give yourself a couple of minutes a day at least. Take some time that works for you when you can be alone and it's quiet, and just check in with your body and yourself, your mind and your thoughts. The body will tell you what's going on as well. So if you've got a knot in your gut and you're feeling stressed, the body's holding that for you. It may not be the thought so strongly, it may play out more in your body. Just take a couple of minutes each day to just sit quietly and check in. I find first thing in the morning, because I don't know anybody who wakes up in the morning going, fantastic, this is going to be a brilliant day, I'm so full of self-love. And what I think is really helpful is to check in when you first wake up. First wake up and just check in. What's going on in my mind right now? What is it that I want to be thinking that's actually going to serve me for the day? Who am I being right now? Am I being sad sack? Am I being, I'm too tired? Am I being this? Is this going to work for me today? So if not, just check in with yourself in the morning, reset your mind and your thoughts. Have that conversation with yourself if you need to. Write it down. I don't spend a lot of time journaling, but what I do, sometimes I go for maybe 20 minutes and it seems like no time at all. But when I do, it's really, really helpful. So it could be you just write down a line to start with, but have somewhere that you can go as a routine and check in with your thoughts and have a book and just start writing it out. And you know what? It may not be words. It may be a drawing. It may be a shape or a color or something like that. It doesn't have to be words. You may go, I just want to get creative because, yeah, as Lakshmi mentioned before, in his beautiful book, they talk about creativity as a form of self-love. You might just want to spend a couple of minutes with a few crayons or something, a pen, just drawing it out.
Yeah. And creativity comes in many forms, not just
Yeah,
for the artists. And I think
absolutely.
I also wanted to add that, you don't necessarily even have to journal every day. It could be once a month, it could be once in 3 months or even 6 months, but I find it really helpful. Like, for example, going to the journaling self-love workshop, that we actually have a dedicated amount of time, just enough for us to reflect on what self-love means to us and how we we have been giving ourselves the love that we deserve, or um the lack of love that we've been giving ourselves, and how we want to love ourselves in the present and the future. I think if we can find the time to do that, not necessarily every day, because I guess it can get a little bit stale to continuously doing that every day, or even obsessive. So we don't really need to put that pressure on ourselves to be that disciplined to do every day. I think we should write down our thoughts every day to keep it organized, because I think writing helps to keep your thoughts in order. But to do this sort of like self-love journaling, it's not necessarily necessary to do it every day, but maybe like once in a while when you really feel like you need it. I think it can be such a great help if you don't have people like Susan to help you. Anyway, I was so lucky to have Susan too, because I haven't mentioned this earlier, but she was actually my mental coach to help me go through my pageant, so Putri Indonesia and Miss Universe. So we did a lot of work together to prepare my winning mindset, I would say, for me to do well in those pageants. And yeah, we did a lot of work together, and she made me do visualizations, which really, really work well. I wish I could have a session with Susan right now on relationships because it really does put your mind in order and make you see things with a lot more clarity. Anyway,
Yeah.
Ayunda here. I'm just checking the chat while we're chatting. I'm just checking the chat box, and I see Ayunda here saying, "Hi everyone, I'm Ayunda from Jakarta. Love is a mindset we should choose often, as bitterness, jealousy, hate can easily spring from a person who hates who they are." Oh. Start with this mindset of loving ourselves, loving our lives and all. Then look around and believe me, you will find love expressed in many ways. I think that's such a beautiful way to write about self-love. And hi, Ayunda, if you'd like to say one or two things or just say hi to us today, that will be amazing. But it's okay if you don't want to. But yeah, I really encourage all of you to participate because again, what we're trying to achieve at Shelf Therapy is to create a strong community and also to encourage people to read through having monthly book clubs so that we can chat and talk about books and also the topics that are within those books. And maybe we can move on to some of the other things that are discussed in the book, for instance, vulnerability and connection. So Lunn also emphasizes the importance of vulnerability in relationships. Um, so do you think that it's something that you could relate to, or is there anything you'd like to share about vulnerability, or if maybe Susan would like to talk about vulnerability in relation to relationships and love?
Yeah, I think it's something I mentioned before, and it's a scary thing to do, right? Because we've created these constructs for ourselves that keep us protected and surviving, the world and ourselves. And then when we meet someone, whether that's a friend or whether that's a work colleague, whether it's an intimate partner, or whoever, and we start developing those relationships, you probably notice that what makes that work is when we start dropping down those barriers that we have to looking good all the time. When we're willing to be vulnerable, to drop that down, to show the other sides of ourselves that we don't feel that proud of, I guess, or that safe in showing to a lot of people. So, vulnerability is huge. If you notice any relationship, let's take friendships, for instance. If you've got a great friendship and you really love that friend and they love you, you know that you can be vulnerable with them without judgment. You can show all those different sides of yourself and create that connection, and they'll have compassion for you. And that's something that's rare, and it's to be valued. And it's to be reciprocated too in any great relationship. It's not just one way. So there was something I kept going back to in the book, and I'm just going to find it here. I'm going to read this. And it's on page 153. And it says, "The seasons of friendship. The friend who holds your hand and says the wrong thing is made of dearer stuff than the one who stays away." That's by Barbara Kingsolver, High Tide in Tucson. But so I guess what they're saying, you don't have to be perfect about it. You don't have to get it totally right. But sometimes just being there for someone when they're being vulnerable and just listening, is an act of love. And to be able to express that is an act of self-love. It's giving voice to that part of yourself, all of it. Not an easy thing to do. Anybody have any other experiences of vulnerability they'd like to share?
Oh,
Alexa?
Alexa.
Hi. Sorry, can you hear me clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let me start with introducing myself. So I'm Alexa, I'm based in Bali. So yeah, I've been just listening about love and stuff. And let me start with, for me, love. I agree. I think Ashley said it was about compassion. So yeah, I think love is just about being compassionate. With like self-love, I realize sometimes self-love is doing the hard things, but also needs to remind yourself that, okay, I accept myself as I am today, but I will still working to be better, but not being obsessive about it. And then vulnerability. I think personally, I become vulnerable when I feel like it's a two-way love, like between me and my friend. The connection is like unspokenable. But when I feel like the other person really love me as a friend and the vulnerability is just flowing. Like I've been crying in front of my friend when I have bad news, and she's also cry, and I'm like, oof, it's actually hurt me that she cried because of my bad news. I'm like, oh, there's something like this. It happened recently, so when Susan saying about vulnerability, I'm like, oh yeah. When I have a wall, but when I feel like the other person is like being vulnerable with me, the wall is just like crumbling, and I'm like, okay, I can also be vulnerable with you. So that was my experience.
That's beautiful, Alexa. So it sounds like there has to be trust there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It was really lovely.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is like one of the hardest thing to show to other people. I think when you show vulnerability, your most authentic self, and also you either trust yourself enough or trust the other person enough. So yeah, once you're able to be vulnerable, you're in a safe space. And I think first you have to be able to be vulnerable with yourself, and then to be okay to be vulnerable in front of other people, I think also gives you a lot of freedom. And I've I agree, I've heard of it that actually vulnerability is a sign of strength. So it's really beautiful.
I will add though, I think why people don't want to be vulnerable is mainly we're just all afraid of like judgments, right? Like if I go out and I meet someone and I have my walls down, like I don't know what someone's gonna think of me or about me or if they're gonna like me or not. So like that's one thing why I feel like everyone, it's human nature to not be vulnerable, to always be strong on the outside. But like truly, I think the main reason to that is just judgments, because humans are made to like judge people. The first thing we think about someone else is always like a judgmental thought, like what this person is wearing, oh my god, he's acting like weird, stuff like that. And that's like human nature. So eventually people just don't want to be vulnerable, and like to actually be their authentic selves is kind of difficult because you have to accept that people are going to judge you. So like that I think is like one reason why it's hard to.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So I think again, the most vulnerable people, I do believe, are the strongest and are the ones that have made peace with themselves, that even though they're showing people, because they made peace with themselves, they don't necessarily take on or care about what other people feel. What do you think, Susan? Or Alex?
Yeah, yeah, or okay, I'll go. Yeah, I think that's true. To the point that, everyone judges, absolutely true. And to your point, Laxmi, where you're talking about that people get to a point where they don't care so much, or rather that they're so comfortable with themselves, because it's a practice thing like anything, that we want to become accomplished at. Self-love is a practice, that the more we become vulnerable, and it's not something that you want to do with everybody, of course, right?
Yeah.
You can be selective about who you do that, because that's part of protecting yourself as well, and that's important. You don't just walk out if you think someone's going to, not honor that vulnerability, that it's not a good idea to expose yourself to that. So, yeah, I think you're right. When someone is comfortable with themselves, or they trust they've done it before and they trust that they're going to be okay if they do that. It's not, something I say to myself is, if I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I'm feeling really down on myself at times, I'll go, this too will pass. And it does. Not one emotion stays with us forever. So it's, yeah, being vulnerable is definitely a practiced trait for sure.
And yeah, and so I think it also does create a stronger bond with you to yourself and or another person when you're able to be vulnerable with them. And so that means that you trust them and you're open to be your most authentic self with them. And that's why you create a stronger bond, I guess, with whoever you're being vulnerable with. And
Yeah.
in the
Sorry, Lakshmi. It
Oh,
really is an honoring thing to do, to be vulnerable with somebody.
yeah.
Like I said before, and Alexa was demonstrating, there is that trust there to do that. So, and it also gives them permission to be vulnerable back. So you're willing to put the guard down. That gives the other person permission to do that as well.
Mm.
So, and for someone to do that, it's an honoring position that they're trusting you enough to hold that space for you.
Yeah. And sometimes it requires incredible strength to open yourself up to others because you're like putting yourself out there on the battlefield, like here without any weapons, right? That's how it sometimes feels like to be vulnerable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we do, and most of the time, do anything to avoid it. Except when it's really important, and it becomes more of a practice act, as we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the book, actually, there's the interview with Dolly Adelton, the author that we were going to read, the author of Everything I Know About Love, are one of our considerations for this month's books, but we can only pick one book, unfortunately, every month. So there's an interview with Natasha, Lunn, and Dolly Alderton called The Beauty of Vulnerability in Friendship. So she talks a lot about how vulnerability and friendship and love in here. So if you want to get more into that, I think this is a really good piece. It's on my iPad. It's page 115. So I'm not really sure what page it is on the actual copy of the book.
Hey, can I just read something on that as well?
Of course, the stage
It's
is
on page 57, and it's related to friendships and self-worth. It says, we talk about needing to find self-worth on our own and not putting that onto a romantic partner. Do you think we can find self-worth through friendships too? So sorry, it's not that much about vulnerability, it's more about self-worth. And this person said, I would not be the person I am now without my friends. They point out my successes when sometimes I can't see them. They show me the good parts of who I am when I don't like myself. That sounds dramatic, but sometimes it's true. So that was more in relation to the self-worth. Page 57.
Yeah. So yeah, basically the book also states that vulnerability strengthens love.
Hmm.
Uh, and then maybe we can talk more about one of the key themes, which is love and loss. So the book discusses love in the context of loss and grief as well. How do you think loss shapes the way we love? Because it could we could take different paths, right? We could be more grateful towards love, or we could sort of be a little bit close to it, like close ourselves to love. Has anybody experienced loss or heartbreak that sort of changed the way that you love, or would you like to share anything about that?
You know, they do say that when we grieve, it's because it's that loss of love. It's the love that we have for the person that's making us grieve.
Mm.
We don't grieve for people we don't love.
Oh, I guess. I think also the people that we have the strongest connection with.
Yeah, yeah. When you were talking about vulnerability before too, it's that creates that connection.
Right. And
Yeah.
for me, there's no end to grief. Like it's always going to be a part of our lives. Like once we, let's say, actually lost a loved one, it's always gonna be a part of us, but it doesn't take away love from our lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does actually. I remember when I lost my mother and somebody many years ago, and I remember a friend saying to me, I said, well, does this pain ever go away? And he said to me, no, but it finds its place within you. And I thought that was a wonderful, and it has a wonderful way of expressing time, the healing of time and loss. So the love doesn't lessen, but the grief does.
And do you also feel that sometimes you break apart with people that you feel like you're grieving them, or like you've lost something in your lives?
Would anybody be willing to share with us?
Sorry.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
Yes, so I think I want to add something related to grief. So, I mean, I first known grief when I lost my grandparents when I was in primary school. So that's the first time I learned about how death could be, incorporated into our lives, and it is something that is so normal. And then one of the things that I think is when we talk about connection, we can also talk about connection that is not for someone or something that is, in a physical presence, like mother who miscarriages, who experience that, is also sort of like facing griefness, but towards something that is not, you know, appear in front of our eyes, right? And I learned about miscarriages when my aunties also happened to experience that when I was in primary school. And then a lot of my friends is now already getting married. And then some of them also experience miscarriages. And as a friend, sometimes I don't know how to put myself into their shoes because the experience of facing griefness is so varying. And So that's why I think I would love to learn more about how everyone facing griefness, and then in terms of being vulnerable, and because sometimes in some marriages, miscarriage also shatter the relationship within the husband and the wife. So that's why I think it's great to explore such connections between between grief and human connections. Thank you, Kat.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Mutiara. Susan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, that was yeah, I've actually experienced this, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only one on here who has. It is a very different type of grief. You're really right. It's because there's no one there for most people, even though you've experienced the pregnancy to a certain point, and you have that, well, I had that connection to the child and the baby, the fetus. So yeah, it's not talked about very much, and it is that silent grief, and it's almost invalidated in some ways. I do think there are conversations starting to happen around this, which is great. But that sense of loss and that sense of love that some mothers have for that child that they've lost is intangible. Like no one else has seen the baby or experienced the baby in any way at all. So it's hard to explain that. Yeah, I agree. It takes a lot of self-nurture when a woman has had a miscarriage, and particularly the further along it seems to be.
And I just want to tell you all a little bit. There's a part in the book called the chapter called Looking Out, and Natasha talks about her and her mom having a phone call. Prior to that, though, she did mention about her relationship with her parents, which were so loving, and she grew up with so much love in her life, even though she was kind of she also grew up kind of longing for love in terms of romantic relationship. And so she talked about how she was always longing for this romantic relationship, but she kind of failed to, I guess, appreciate or see the love that was in front of her. And she talked about having a phone call with her mom and how she was not really paying attention. She said, I absent-mindedly asked short questions, holding the phone in one hand while fishing around my drawer for two matching socks with the other. And then, yeah, so she talked about how she interviewed a woman earlier who'd lost her mother, who said what she missed most was sharing the tiny, seemingly pointless detail of each other's lives, like which Goggle box star was her mom's current favorite, or which plants in her garden were flowering that week, or which member of Take That was the most handsome. It was only because of that conversation that I sat down on the edge of the bed and really listened to my mom's voice. The way she shortened Pilates to Laris, how she said, I'll give you a tip every time she talked me through a recipe. Instead of waiting for the right moment to interrupt, soon I wanted to tightly bind this conversation to memory. And what are you making up for pudding? I asked, knowing then that since I was already late, 5 more minutes would not make a difference. I wanted my mom to keep on talking, to always be there on the other end of the phone, updating me on the state of Carl and Susan's marriage in Neighbors, or asking who she would invite for Christmas this year, even though it was February. So, do we notice the subtle opportunities for love which are woven through our daily lives? So, I think that's also something beautiful that she talked about, where grief could remind us to love more, if that makes sense. And I think
Yeah, and I love that. That's
I
really
guess it's
beautiful.
also part of like being grateful for what you have currently in the present, what you still have. Sorry, Susan.
No, not at all. It's saying it, like we listen to people we love, right? Like she reminded herself to stop and listen.
Yeah.
Love that. It's really beautifully said, like all the small things in life that people miss when someone's gone, or when we move from somewhere we loved, or it's those little things.
Yeah. So
So
just yes.
I just wanted to just run through a few things. I mean,
Mm.
not that love's such an elusive and complex, nuanced sort of expression that everyone throughout history knew about, no matter what language it was in, and expressed in some way. And I think from, the book, it's given it such a beyond a concept. It's actually got a beautiful expression of that in all the different areas of what love is, whether it's something you're passionate about or romantic love, or whether it's friendship, and all the different internal aspects of love. And I just wanted to get back to self-love for 2 seconds. And it's different for everybody how we care for how we love ourselves, right? Um, but there are a few things that really do demonstrate when we are in the mode of self-love, and it's caring for ourselves, valuing ourselves enough that we're caring for our emotional self, our physical self, our mental self, our spiritual self, in all those areas, so that we have that general sense of well-being. And we don't always get this right and balanced all the time, but overall, there's an acceptance and a compassion for yourself that we talked about, all different aspects of yourself. Setting boundaries is really important to look out for ourselves and who we are vulnerable with, or what we're prepared to say no to because we know it goes against our well-being, whether that's in a friendship or a relationship or work. What else? Self-awareness. We talked about self-awareness and growth, and I think it was Alexa who said it's also about challenging ourselves. It's not all just, really sweet and lovely, compassionate stuff. It's actually, if we want to grow as human beings, to love ourselves, just like we would with a child when we're helping them to learn to walk. If they fall down, we don't leave them there. We go, okay, up you get again, and you go again and you fall over. When we do that for ourselves, it helps us to grow and as human beings. So challenging ourselves is really important, as well as supporting ourselves. And the same in relationship as well. A great relationship is one that supports and challenges. And forgiveness and letting go, which I think is probably one of the most difficult things. How do we forgive ourselves when we've messed up, or how do we forgive someone else and let go of the past and keep focusing on, the future? So, we can distill it down to a concept in some ways, but within that concept is all those nuances and ways of being and connections and all the beautiful things we've talked about today, what love is. And if you think about it, I've never heard of anybody, well, let me put it this way. When I've read books or I've seen films, people at the end of their life always say the most important thing was love, or the people they love, or they didn't love enough, or they didn't love themselves. Love is just universal. And it's, I wish they'd taught us more or demonstrated it more. And I think it's starting to come out. And I think when such a book like this, like Conversations of Love, is so popular, I think it is indicative that we're starting to realize the importance of it for ourselves and in life.
Yeah, and sometimes we only
Anybody?
realize about the importance when we have conversations around it, or when we do read about it. then it gives, or it helps us to take a few steps back through reading other people's experiences or thoughts to reflect on our own. Before we wrap things up, I just want to read more of what everyone said about oh no, not self-love, sorry, just love. Okay. Just quickly, Henny said that love is a deep and multifaceted connection. It's dynamic, evolving, and often requires vulnerability, but it also has the potential to bring immense joy and fulfillment. Yasmin said that for me, love is about understanding and moments of selflessness. And then El Nino from Ambon, Maluku said, for me, love is acceptance, accepting yourself as who you really are. Teresa said, love is perseverance, the ability to maintain love in various forms through difficult times. Sometimes it's easy to hate things or someone, but the way we can still show compassion to others is through love. Rachel from Jakarta said that love has a very deep meaning, but I can also say that love is a language you choose to speak to yourself and to others, which is really beautiful. And Natasha Lunn said at the end of her book is that she's so grateful. I am not only to have known love, but to have known just how important it was and to pay attention to it. And I think that's a really, really beautiful ending. And I'd like to say that this book was really interesting to read because it's one of the first book that I've read where there's a lot of interviews and really useful insights from very different, very established and inspiring people like Alain de Botton, Dolly Alderton, Esther Perel, and so many more, and how they all have different experiences and different ways that they learn about love and how they've interacted with it. And there's so many things that we could learn about it. And so if any of you are interested in learning more about love, which I think will only enrich your life and your environment and your future, I think you should definitely give this book a go. It's a very easy read, and you can always go back to it if you ever need it. And it's a book that you don't have to actually read from beginning to end. You could actually just flip a page or find an interview that you're interested in, like the Dolly Alderton interview about friendship and vulnerability. So yeah, I think it's a book for a lot of people, and it could be useful. I just see here that there's someone who just showed their video. Hi, Gidi. Thanks so much for joining. I think you're the first male to be in this online book club tonight, and we're very happy to have another male, and we really appreciated uh, our conversation about love or self-love and it being exclusive to women. And so we're happy to welcome everyone here tonight. Yes, 2 thumbs up. And so I think we're gonna have to end tonight, but before we end, I would like to make a special announcement for next month's book pick. And yeah, so maybe some upcoming events. But next month, because we're celebrating International Women's Day on the 8th of March, the big theme for next month is gonna be all about women. But I think all men should come and participate and celebrate women as well. So it's not inclusive to women, it's also about men supporting women. And so our pick of the month next month, the month of March, is gonna be The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I'm not sure if any of you have read that book before, but if you have, give us a hands up. And I'm so excited to welcome all of you again next month. It's gonna be a totally different book. It's very exciting because it's a very interesting book by a very interesting, very established author from South Korea who last year won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So I can't wait to dig in and dissect and analyze that book for all of you so that we can have this book club again next month. Yeah, thank you so much for participating, guys. Please follow our Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to our podcast, and follow Shelf Therapy for all future events and discussions. And thank you so, so much for tonight. We'll send you a form to give us feedback for this session. Please be as honest as you want because we want to keep improving and making it better for all of you guys. Thank you. Let's
Thank
take
you,
a
everyone.
group photo.
All right.
Everyone who's showing their beautiful selves. Oh, hello. We should have done a photo in the beginning.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So stop shooting my camera around.
For your
Seriously.
All
video.
right. So, again, thank you everyone for tuning in on our second monthly live stream book club. And if you have time, we would like you to also fill out the feedback form. I've already attached it on the chat box, and we'll send you guys the link also via emails in the next couple days. And yeah, are we still waiting for anyone else to turn on their camera? All right. I'm gonna.
Susan, can you put up the book, please? Yay. Oh, yeah, everybody put up their books. I read on my iPad, so.
Okay, we're gonna post in 3, 2, 1. Another one. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and joining. We'll see you guys again, hopefully soon in our next book club and next event.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.